Welcome, everybody. This is Craig, your thought provoker, doing a Rodcast mobile podcast where we have conversation with motivated people for the purpose of motivating people. I'm here with Tori, very motivated individual. And so you mentioned something that was like very interesting to me. You were saying that it's failure that pushes you as far as motivation is concerned.
Right.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah. I think, like I was saying, people are all motivated differently. Certainly when I was younger, I thought my motivation was to prove to myself that I could do something, that I could, was as smart as the boys, that I could, outperform the guys. I work in a male dominated field. But I realized it's not about proving myself. Like, I'm comfortable and I know what I'm capable of, but what it comes down to is the fear of failure. So, I guess that's the what if I don't make my sales number? What if I don't perform to the top of the level? What if I don't prove to someone that I'm good enough, and then I lose my job, and then what happens? So it's just that fear of failure that drives me and motivates me.
Oh, okay. And I guess you feel like that continues to push you.
Yeah, for sure. And even though, when I sit there and rationalize it, I know that I will not lose my job. I will not become destitute, but I don't want to fail. Like, I have a very high standards. And again, I know what I'm capable of. So that fear of failure continues to drive me.
Okay. And so, like, where do you see yourself as far as like continuing in your field, future-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I work in the medical field. I work certainly with more disruptive technology. My passion is, more of these startups, these innovative technologies that have the capability to change medicine, to change, how we treat patients, to change the trajectory of healthcare, quite honestly. So ironically, I love the whole startup space. And the irony of that is obviously a lot of them fail.
Why do you think that is, though?
I can speak to my specific space. It's like an arms race, right? Like, everyone's trying to come up with the best, and then you have to go through all of these steps in a startup, right? You have to raise the funds, you have to be able to commercialize it, and I think there's just it's almost like everybody's trying to do the same thing because that's what is needed and that's where the market's going. So everyone's trying to get to that next step, and not all of them can succeed, quite honestly, because to commercialize something and be able to have a company thrive, you've got to have a lot of market share, and you've got to have like a lot of these other moving pieces put in place. So it's not as simple as I used to think it was, anyway.
Have you ever tried your own startup?
No.
Would you think?
I am a very big picture person. So I like to come up with the big ideas.
Okay.
But then I'm not good at the little tiny pieces, the details. So I need teams and a lot of people around me who I know are good at the details and putting those pieces together. I think. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say that's real interesting that you say that, because it sounds like you have everything that it takes when you say that, because you know what you need. Considering the fact that you know what you need, like, wouldn't it be the best thing if you were to do it?
Yeah.
I'm saying that you should.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. If you were to do it, wouldn't it be the best thing to find those individuals? I mean, you would be perfect for knowing what the company needs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find the people who need it, come up with a mission for the company.
Yeah.
Maybe people that you worked with in the past. Because I'm sure as soon as you think what your company would need if you were to start it, people come to mind as, oh, well, so-and-so will be good with this, or so-and-so will be good with that. Have you ever thought of it to that degree?
So Yes and no. So let me rewind. When I say I would not consider doing my own startup, what I do is kind of my own startup in terms of like strategy, right?
Okay.
And I trust the doctors, I trust the scientists, I trust them to come up with the best technology that is needed. But with regards to how to build all of that infrastructure, that strategy, that development, getting all the people in place, like that's kind of how I function. So I will give you like a much more broad example. So I am very heavily invested in health equity.
Okay.
And I was doing this in 2012 when health equity was not really a thing. And now, obviously, it's a much bigger topic, and healthcare has moved in that direction where there are more requirements for hospitals to have a health equity plan. So, how are we going to reach patients that we've typically underserved? So, our Black or Hispanic communities. How do we create a strategy to treat them equitably? So the problem with that is that people don't really know what to do, right?
Okay.
So there are very few people who have been doing this since 2012 when it wasn't a thing.
Okay.
So I'm very, that is kind of my startup. My startup is introducing the concept of health equity,
So
health
could you
disparities.
explain the concept of health
Yeah.
equity, like for those who don't understand fully?
Sure. So, and maybe let me flip it and talk about health disparities, which are health disparities are when patient populations, due to race, ethnicity, gender, are treated less equitably than their white, typically male counterparts.
Okay.
So when I can speak only to cardiology specifically, but when you look at patients who receive like an internal defibrillator to shock their heart back into rhythm because they've already had a sudden cardiac event, Black women are 4 times less likely than white men to receive that technology.
And what is that in comparison to Black men?
So Black men slightly higher, but not much, and I cannot remember the statistic off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
But so the new kind of one of the new technologies is it's called a TAVR procedure. So it's a valve replacement, but it's minimally invasive. Okay, so you're not opening the whole entire chest. So it's very safe. It's easier. More patients, should be receiving this. And there are very few Black patients, very few Hispanic patients.
All right, go ahead.
And even in the studies, they're very, very underrepresented. And so, and that's another thing is how, we get more diverse patient populations involved in clinical trials. So they are represented when we're looking at efficacy and safety.
Okay, because, all right, so I don't know if you've heard of this. What I heard, I don't know the accuracy of it, but the person that invented the blood transfusion in his later years was denied the blood transfusion because it wasn't from somebody of the same complexion.
I do not, I cannot fact check you,
Okay.
but I would not be surprised.
Okay.
That would be very accurate.
All right, so wouldn't it more so depend on, because you talk about health equity, wouldn't it be more dependent on the individual?
It is, and that's called bias.
Yeah.
It's called.
Yeah. So, like, how do you fix that? Because a body
I know.
fix what an individual can.
Yeah.
Chooses to do, right?
So, when you go back historically, you look at, most doctors are white men. So who's teaching our medical students? White men.
Okay.
So they are, teaching, and even to their non-white counterparts, their female counterparts, there is the way that they deliver care, the way that they go into a room and treat a patient, that is how they're teaching. right? And so that's what these students see.
So it would start at the schools then.
So it starts at the school. It starts with recruiting diverse talent. It starts with recruiting, you know, Black, Hispanic, Latino, you know.
People are going to treat people.
Well, it's yeah. So it's getting them into leadership positions. It's encouraging them to go into cardiology. It's encouraging them to go into these fields that, you know, are very underrepresented by particular, you know, races, ethnicities, and genders. So it does become a very kind of, you know, grassroots. And then you know, I would love to say that we can go in and educate on cultural competencies and cross-cultural communication, which quite honestly should be incorporated into medical school and any time you're interacting with other humans, but it's not, right? And so you might walk into a room with, you know, a Hispanic Latino family, and you don't necessarily understand those cultural nuances, and so you're speaking to them from your perspective. But that's
having an understanding of the other culture,
yeah,
can give you a better understanding of their behavior.
Exactly. So you can just go into the room and show up how you show up in every other room, right? And because of that, so then we kind of circle back, because like you might walk into a room as a physician and, you know, not understand their cultural, not understand their communication styles, and that may be the difference of them deciding to receive treatment or not.
Interesting.
So they might decide like, oh, I don't want to do this procedure because I don't feel like I don't trust this person, right? And so I'm not going to have this potentially life-saving treatment because they don't understand me. They don't get me.
Mm-hmm. I feel like when it comes to doctors, that they have more of a less connected approach. And I feel like it's that across the board, whereas though they don't get too personal, they're just straightforward as far as like when delivering information, whether it be good news or bad news.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. And I only say that because if they're the same across the board, wouldn't it be dependent on the public to understand that this is how the doctor is going to approach it? Like, would they be willing to accept the diagnostics a lot better if they know that, listen, he's not looking at it from a personal standpoint, even though we are?
So let's say
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. So let me like create a scenario. You take your 90-year-old grandmother in, right? And I'm the doctor and I'm talking to her about her treatment options, but I am delivering just clear, concise facts and like not really taking time to explain anything. And that information is all very overwhelming to her, right? So she goes home and let's say you don't understand it either. And like you go home and grandma's not tech savvy, so she's not getting on Google to see like exactly what was said. You're overwhelmed. You're not necessarily in there taking notes with all of these big medical terminology things that are getting thrown at you. And so you don't really understand. And so it's not on the public, it's not on patients to...
It's all about them delivering information.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, though.
I mean, I think, you know, newer generations, like obviously we're all becoming more health educated, right? Our health literacy is
more than the past, definitely.
Correct. But again, we also have technology barriers, and, you know, we have communities and, you know, large parts of metropolitan urban areas that, you know, maybe aren't as educated, and again, they don't have access to technology. So how are we ensuring that they're going to receive the information that they need? You know, it's on doctors to go in and make sure their patients understand and are educated, or give them resources. You know, we have nurse educators, we have you know, health navigators that can help. But it is on the physicians to make sure that they are delivering that information in a way that patients can digest it.
It sounds like balance amongst everybody. It seems like it's something that's very important to you. Like,
yeah,
you're really passionate about that. How did you become passionate about that, though?
About the health equity and the exactly. All of it. Yeah,
and just having everything balanced, whereas though it doesn't just serve one group of people, but it can serve everybody equally and benefit everybody equally. Like, how did you become passionate about that overall?
Yeah. So I know you cannot tell, but I am not lily white. My grandfather's Japanese. His mother, so his parents were immigrants.
So you're quarter Japanese?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they immigrated to the U.S. Early 1900s. Well, like beginning of the 1900s. Had children. They were able to co-op and live in a large Japanese community, but they all, spoke Japanese. So the children grew up speaking Japanese, even though they were born in the U.S. And then when they went to school, they were treated unfairly. They were kicked out of school because they didn't have good English. So most of them dropped out of school. So my grandfather was one of those. Actually, most of the siblings were, except my youngest great uncle. But
and do you speak Japanese as well?
No. Japanese Americans were very quick to assimilate into white culture. So they kind of,
Is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I think it is, because we've lost a lot of history. And what I'm about to tell you, like my cousin, like we had very different family histories that were told to us. So about how like the great grandparents died, how the grandparents died. Start of the war, my great grandmother went in for hysterectomy. All of the kids were out in the waiting room, and she was cut open without anesthesia. So obviously, a result of racism, right? Unequitable treatment. And so I think, as I got older and I went into the medical field on the sales side, it didn't occur to me immediately. When I started going into implants.
Now I'm hearing your story, it seems like it all makes sense to me, like why you do have that passion.
Yeah. But then, when I was in sales and I was, doing defibrillator pacemaker implants, and I worked downtown LA, like literally downtown LA, the main hospital that I worked at, it was mostly Latinos around us. All the businesses were Latino owned, yet were Latino. Very few were Black. The other hospital was in an area that served mostly Black patients, yet we didn't do a lot of devices on them. And so you start to kind of think these things through, like, why am I here? Or like, where are all the patients of color? Like, where are they going? Because they're not here. And you start, looking into, you start questioning it. And at that time there was research. I mean, we've had research for years and years and years. We continue to do research that's, 30, 40 years old, showing that Blacks, Hispanics receive care at lesser rates. Yet we still keep doing research and we don't do treatments.
What it sounds like is that overall, because you're teaching me a lot right here, and I understand, like, I see the core of like your motivation when we talk about the history of your family, and I think that that's a wonderful thing, and I find that it's interesting how things that happen in our family can help motivate us to move in certain directions in our field.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you should pursue your own startup, and even if it's in the realm of just education, to educate people, or even to encourage people to go into that field, because I feel like because of media personally and because of social media that people are less encouraged to go into specific fields that can actually benefit them. Like, not too many people of color are encouraged to be police officers, just because of the way that the history of that is. But had that been the opposite, then we might have a different, had that been opposite 20, 40 years ago, we might have a different way that things function right now, though. But listen, but Tori, it's great talking with you, dear.
Thank
I
you.
wish you the best
Thank
in
you.
everything in it with your trip.
Thank
And
you.
is there anything else that like you personally would like to add?
No, I mean, I think this took a little bit of a different turn than where we started, but
No, I mean, because we're talking about motivation. We're talking about what motivates you.
That's true.
We're talking about, like how, you can, because you never know, there may be someone else that could be listening right now that isn't the same field that you're in. And they may have lost motivation.
Yeah.
And it's all about helping people to find that motivation back.
Yeah, no, I mean, so as we're closing, we started with my fear of failure, which motivates me, which does, but it also is, and anyone who knows me will, like, I can turn any conversation into a health equity pitch, all of them. I'm frequently asked if this is the hill I'm going to die on, and yes, it is. So this does motivate me, I mean, creating equity, having better solutions, making sure patients have access to the care that they deserve. I mean, that is yes, definitely motivates me for sure.
Well, Tori, it's been wonderful having you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. And you guys have a great afternoon.
Well.